We are recording. Welcome everybody to today's Whisky Circus. I'm very pleased you could all join us. The whole intention of today is to introduce you to a brand new whisky launch from the English Whisky Company. To date, it's our oldest age statement, which is 11 years old. The package. So that's the package. Beautiful yellow striking box that, when sitting on the shelves, really does stand out. We're going to come to that in a minute. What I'd like to quickly do is just share a little bit about the distillery. I'm not going to talk too long because we all want to get into the whiskey anyway. So the English Whisky Company, as most of you will know, was founded in 2005. The production actually started in 2006, with the first casks being filled in December. We then opened a visitor centre in 2007, and the distillery was started because James Nelstrop, who is Andrew's father, he was coming to retirement, and at 60 years old he decided he wasn't ready for retirement yet. So he decided that he would open a whiskey distillery with the intention of making the best whiskey that he possibly could. And the nice thing actually about that is, had he still been with us then, today would have been his 75th birthday. So with the launch of a brand new whiskey, it's quite fitting that we're doing it on his birthday as well. So, you know, when we get to the 11-year-old, then it'd be really nice if we all sort of raise a dram to him in his memory, because, you know, after all, he's the one that started it. Yeah. But what I want to do today is we'll start with our original. So hopefully you've all got a glass of the original with you. Yep. Anybody who's got the full bottle, or if you hold the little bottles closer, it will seem bigger.
Oh.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So the original is our entry-level core range. It's all first fill bourbon and refill bourbon. And when I say refill, I mean second fill rather than third or fourth fill. All the casks are sourced from Jim Beam in Kentucky. We only use Jim Beam casks at the moment for the bourbon side of maturation. And hopefully what you'll find within this one is it's a very light, easy drinking whiskey. My opinion of this is it's not meant to be world beating. It's meant to be a drink that you drink for enjoyment purposes. You're not, you know, we don't want you to sit and analyze this for hours and hours and hours. We want you to drink it. And that's the whole purpose of it. And hopefully when you go into this whiskey, you find a lot of sort of citrus notes, malty notes, very gentle aroma.
Very aromatic.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of this one as kind of like a bowl full of salad. You know the old fruit salad sweets you used to get?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It sort of jumps out like that with a nice smack of vanilla.
Yeah.
How much is this a bottle usually?
So this one retails at $39.99 in our online shop. I do believe you can get it slightly cheaper at Master of Malt. It's certainly a drink. I'm pretty sure it's still in stock at Master of Malt as well. So Master of Malt, well, basically any good retailer. Pretty sure the Whiskey Exchange has it as well. So it's widely available. If you can't get hold of it, like I say, it's in stock at the shop on English Whisky site. So just go there, which all our current available releases are still available there. So obviously it does help with the fact that we not only make the whiskey, mature the whiskey, but we also bottle it on site as well. So we generally do have stocks of everything that is available. But I mean, what is everybody picking up? Are you all getting sort of that nice fruity, citrusy malty sort of notes.
Like tropical, like vanilla
Creamy vanilla.
Yeah.
custards and things like
I
that.
get ripe bananas.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I was thinking
Quite
like
crisp as well.
banana sweets.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I think
But effect on it.
one that comes up a lot is the foamy bananas.
Yeah.
I think it's depending how old you are, depends whether you really understand what foamy bananas are.
Ourselves, haven't we, big time there?
Yeah,
It's got like a nice kind of crisp green apple to it as well.
Just want people to drink it.
yeah. I mean, I always think this one reminds me of that sort of apple peel. Just as you peel in an apple and you get that sort of juicy spraying off, and it's that really fresh scent.
Lemon peel, and that's it. It's not a sharp citrus note. It's a dull one, the peel note.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we do say is that the sort of citrus, very fresh fruity note seems to run through most of our core range. It's kind of what I think of our distillery profile, that it's there because we use the bourbon casks, you always pick up the distillery profile. It's unlike when you go into some companies that, their young spirit is going into very dominant sherry casks, wine casks. Again, I'm not knocking that because that's some of the whiskies I'm loving at the moment, but you kind of almost lose the distillery profile in there. Whereas when you mature in, again, not so much first fill, but when you add that set refill cask as well, you pick up all those distillery characters that are running through from your new make right through the whole sort of range of what you're trying to produce.
Yeah, it's a kind of style of maturation that I really love, because it shows that your distillery has confidence in its inherent kind of distillate character.
Yeah.
And I like that it's kind of naked there and it sort of can't really hide away.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that has been going on for quite some time, because I mean, I've been quite critical of the spirit in the past, because I always felt it was quite a youthful spirit. But as it's maturing, you always saw what it could be. You always knew it could suddenly come to this great spirit. And what I always found is you always got that little tinge of youthful new make spirit. But talking to our head distiller, David, he went on to tell me that we actually changed the cut of the new make to try and change that for future production. And I think the spirit that we're kind of seeing now is that spirit where the cut has been changed to get rid of that youthfulness. But like Ed says, because we use a bourbon cask, we're not hiding anything. You are going to find anything that is wrong with the whiskey, you will be able to pick it up, because it's there to show off the character. It's not there to show off the cask as such.
Do you have any idea on the age?
So the age, yes, I've got an idea of it. It's the no age statement. The reason we've put it out as a new age statement is not because it's young whiskey. Everybody knows it's going to be young whiskey because we're not an old distillery. We don't have massive stocks of aged whiskey. So this probably has an average age of about 5 to 6 years. We can't disguise that because we don't have the stocks to be able to put 12, 15, 18-year-old whiskey out. So everybody knows we have to put a youthful whiskey out. But I think the idea of the fact it's a no-age statement and the fact it is between 5 and 6 years old, we are relying on the strength of the flavours and the aromas in the whiskey and the dedication put in from David of making good spirit. If we didn't think it was right, we wouldn't put it out. It's not out just for the sake of it. It's out because we feel it's ready.
There's nothing wrong with the young whiskey.
No.
No. It's actually, there's no sharpness about it. There's nothing nasty in it at all. For its age, I think it's really nice.
It does show confidence in it, because you find a lot of the young whiskies are finished in a sherry or wine or port, something like that, just to give it a bit more depth, a bit more profile. So the fact that it is only ex-bourbon shows that you're confident in the spirit.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like I say, you know, the majority has always been first fill and second fill, because in theory we don't really have anything other than first and second fill. Going forward, that may change. We may change how we made the whiskey up, but the idea is that this is there to show you the distillery profile. This is what we set out to make, was whiskey that was kind of done in the original. I mean, it isn't the original style if you want to go back in history, because most whiskies were probably transported in sherry cask or port or wine. But the history of whiskey in theory shows that the bourbon maturation is kind of like the normality. And that's the way we wanted to go. Now, I know a question will come up later as to what other casks we use, so I'll let you know now. We predominantly use bourbon casks, like I say, from Jim Beam. We have also used Cab Sav. We've done Sauternes. We've done a multitude of wines. We have Oloroso, and we obviously have PX, which we season ourselves. We've just seasoned the rum casks ourselves, which was a change from how we used to do it. We used to get the seasoned casks in and then fill them. We now season our own casks. We've been seasoning Pedro Jimenez for a number of years now, and we do have some aged stock of sherried, PX, Oloroso, and the wine side as well. So we do have a good, not a massive amount of casks, but we do have a nice little range that we are experimenting with, looking at releasing in the future. And I think if you look at our small batch, you will see that we do have quite a varied selection of casks. We obviously use virgin oak as well. We do have the two expressions that are released, which is the virgin oak and the virgin smoky. So we're kind of showing off a multitude of different casks, but the majority of whiskey that we will probably produce will be bourbon, ex-bourbon, matured whiskey. But have you all had a drink of it? Please, we're not doing this like a tweet tasting. I'm quite happy for you to nose it and drink it at your own pace. The idea is that we're going to do this quite relaxed. Now, I'm hoping Sophie's obviously decided to pair it with food, so we're going to see what she's pairing it with in a minute. Strawberries, perfect. Summer fruits.
Very apple forward.
Sorry, Claire?
Lots of apple.
Yeah.
Followed by, I'm not going to say custard because I don't have custard, it's awful, but vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just spoke earlier about the cask that you use. Joining in with that, because it's got that citrusy notes, are you also looking to do more of that white wine? So,
hang on. Somebody has something going on in the background. Can we turn that off, because I'm struggling to hear Marcus at the moment?
It's Whiskey Barrel 6, I think. Sorry to call you out. That's where the box was.
Sorry, say that again, please, Marcus.
So you just spoke about the different casks that you have in the warehouse. Considering that this is such a citrusy and tropical fruit for whiskey, are you also looking into the white wine casks you spoke about? Are we looking at Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio type casks to kind of expand on that distillery profile?
Not really, because the idea behind the wine casks and the sherry casks is not really to become core range. So the core range will always be bourbon. The idea behind the others is just to show a little bit of diversity into what we can do and how it reacts with the others. Up until now, we haven't really, I think we've done 2 full matured in wine and sherry. And it will be, the idea going forward is that we're not going to put a lot of emphasis on the sherry and the wine cask. It's always going to be about the bourbon. Now, that's not to say in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, when it's fully mature, you know, when we are getting good mature stocks of it, that our philosophy will not change. At the moment, the idea is it's working in bourbon, it's showing the character, that's where we want to go. Hopefully that answers your question.
Soren?
Yep.
Hi, buddy. Sorry I'm late. Could you mute everybody and then just let people unmute them? Because every time there's any background noise, it does cut out the this
Yeah.
Zoom.
Right. So, right. So you should all be muted now in the sense. Tram Gazette hasn't muted. I can't see everybody at the moment. So, right. So yeah. Hopefully you can all unmute yourself if you need to talk now. Then. So if we can if anyone's got a question, if you just want to try it to make sure it is working that way.
I've got a question actually, as we were talking about casks a moment ago.
Yeah.
I've asked this before of someone at the distillery, but English wine is becoming growing and growing. A fallout of climate change, as lots of people can plant grapes and things they couldn't before. Do you have any plans for teaming up with any English vineyards and buying casks from them, some English wine casks for an English whiskey?
The simple answer to that one is, what did they tell you before?
He said, ask Soren.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure on the answer of that one, but I would think, why not? I mean, obviously it's not my decision to make, but I would say that everything is possible. There's no point us sitting here and saying no, because like I say, in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, it might all change. Now, as far as I am aware, we haven't at the moment, but that doesn't mean to say that something might be happening behind the scenes that even I'm not privileged of, because obviously, I haven't. The problem I've got at the moment is being new to the company, and with all the lockdown, I haven't been able to get through and properly chat with everybody. But future, who knows? I know we are using wine casks, so why not? I don't think the days, it's a bit like whiskey. The days of everybody thinking the only whiskey in the world is Scotch are gone. We are an English whiskey company. We're showing that we can make whiskey. We're making award-winning whiskies. The same with wine. It's not all about France anymore. It's, there are world wines out there that are absolutely spectacular. So why not look for some of these wine casks in the future and get them used, if that's the way the distillery and the boss decides to go.
I've no idea how many English vineyards are actually maturing in oak, in wood at all. So
that's the other thing, yeah. So you don't know if they are. Is the oak any good? There's lots of other questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think one of the things that every distillery will tell you is that we only use the finest oak available.
And selected casks as well.
We select the finest oak casks available. So if every distillery is selecting the finest oak casks, I'm quite interested to know who gets the rubbish ones. But yeah, I mean,
the garden centres.
The garden centres, yeah.
There you go, what a rubbish one.
No, I mean, I wouldn't want to personally rule out the fact of using some English wine barrels. I think that would be nice to be able to say, look, we've got an English product here that we have produced English whiskey within English wine casks from English barley, distilled, bottled, everything in England. Why not? I mean, that if we look on it, giving an Australian company a big shout out here, Starwood, they do exactly that. They use the Australian malt, they use Australian wine barrels, and it's fantastic whiskey. So it's not a case of having to source your barrels from France or America or wherever. It's finding the ones that fit your distillery. But
I think another thing coming in there could be that obviously Australia's had a wine industry for hundreds of years now, and it's really expansive. But in line with production, I've not been to the English Whisky Distillery. What kind of setup are you guys running? What can you tell us about that?
So basically the setup that we're doing is, we are relatively small in the sense of we only produce around 70,000 litres a year, which when you start looking at distilleries in Scotland or even Cotswolds or anywhere, we are very, very small. If we ramped up our production fully, we would probably still only get about 80,000, maybe 85,000 litres per year. it's not a lot. You know, it's quite a small amount. 15% of that is for peated. So again, we're not making a lot of peated whiskey. We source our barley from as much as possible from the Norfolk area. We do use a little bit from Lincolnshire, which is from the family farms, so one of the Nelstrop farms in Lincolnshire. All our malt is then obtained through crisps. Our unpeated malt comes from crisps in Fakenham. The peated malt has to come from Scotland. So we are getting our peated malt from crisps, which is just outside Aberdeenshire. So it's a mainland peat. While we're on the subject of peat, when we come to the smoky, our peat levels, we stipulate a minimum of 50 ppm. So 50 ppm is getting up there. But I think when you get to it, you'll find it's not a massively peated whiskey. It's just very nicely balanced. It's obviously a different style of peat to Islay. It's not the medicinal sort of heavy hitting peat that you expect. It's more of a fruity, florally sort of woody type of peat, and it gives a softer feel and mouthfeel to the whiskey. Now, production wise, what I wanted to do was sort of break it down a little bit between them all, but we can do it as one big hit. So basically we're obviously double distillation, but we do some triple distillation. We use a 1 ton mash tun. We have 3 stainless steel washbacks, which, if I remember right, are 7,500 litres. 2 stills. So our wash still runs at 2,750 litres, with the spirit still running at 1,800 litres. Like I say, everything is done on site. We have quite a small mill, so we're not producing a massive amount of distillation. We use a brewer's yeast, so in dry formation, which I know there's been a lot of chat about the types of yeast, whether it should be dry, whether it should be liquid. We've gone with the dry. Obviously, our 2 stills run on the condensers rather than worm tubs. So it's a pretty much, if you walked into our distillery, you would see what is in most Scottish distilleries. It's very small, it's very compact. Like I say, we only produce 70,000 litres a year, so we are not big scale by any chance, by any means. The sort of big thing that the English Whisky Company like to say is we are kind of like the forebearers of English whiskey. We are the oldest fully working English whiskey company. There are other English producers of English whiskey, but we are dedicated to whiskey, obviously, rather than sort of a brewery that might make a bit of whiskey, or a gin company that might make a little bit of whiskey. I mean, is that what you were expecting, or is there anything else sort of more in depth that you want?
Fermentation, wise, what kind of length of time are you fermenting for? I'm just thinking.
So fermentation, we are averaging 95, 96 hours. So we're quite well up there. The idea of the longer fermentation for us is to give you this fruity, floral, light whiskey. Going back to the still shape, obviously, we've got quite tall stills as well. So again, that helps us to produce a nice light liquid and fruity and floral. It's not, you see some of the distilleries where they've got a nice sort of dumpy one to give you the heavy liquid. Ours are quite tall, to give you purposely, to give us the nice fruitiness that hopefully you're all finding in this one.
I've got a question, mate. What's your warehouse setup?
So the warehouse is, yes, they are a rack system. We don't go, I think we go, is it between 6 and 8 high, so we're not high, laid on the side. One interesting thing that we was talking to David about not so long back is the temperature the variations as well. So on a typical day in summer, our temperatures on the bottom row average between sort of 16, 17 degrees, whereas at the top they can be as high as 28 degrees. So you can see the, you know.
And do you rotate at all, or just leave them?
No, I'm pretty sure we don't rotate. That is a question I did ask when I was last up there, but because it was in a group of people, I didn't really get the answer to that one. But I'm pretty sure we don't rotate. So
yeah,
the ones at the top are probably coming up first, and then going back up there, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I know some places they rotate quite regular. We're not, as far as I'm aware. But if that is any difference, then I will. When we put this out, I will rectify if I am wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean most distilleries that I've talked to that have racked warehouses, I don't think they've been rotating, so it wouldn't surprise me.
No, I mean, I think when you start to rotate, because our warehouses aren't massive neither, then you then start to make a lot of work for yourself within a very confined space. And when you go to ours, you typically look in one of the warehouses, which I think is warehouse number 8 now, and you will see that there isn't a lot of room to actually work in there. You know, there's enough room, and that's about it.
And how much is in the warehouses now? And what about the older stuff? Is this 11 like the peak of it, and it's going to be a while to get older stuff, or?
No, right. So what I'll do with that, if you don't mind, I'll answer that when we get to the 11-year-old.
Sure, yeah.
Because that is something that kind of does come into what I was going to say about the 11-year-old anyway. So what I'll try and stick with this one for now, but as soon as we get onto the 11-year-old, prompt me and I will answer that one because it's interesting in the sense of it. I mean, has anybody got any more to say about this original, or are we ready to move on to the sort of mainstay of today, which is the 11-year-old?
I just had one question really about nice,
right.
Kind of light summery kind of whiskey. It does. You can sort of imagine yourself drinking that on a warm evening in the Norfolk Downs, if that makes sense. It's kind of like cereally. It's light. It's fruity. Oh, it's sweet.
Yeah.
Overall, it's just a nice drink, isn't it?
It is, and that's like I said earlier. That's the purpose that we set out to do, was to produce a drinking whiskey. You know, we're not after that whiskey. I mean, it's always nice to have a whiskey that everybody wants to collect. You know, let's not get away from that. People that collect whiskey, it's always nice for us to say, you know, we've got something out there that's collectible. But the idea is, it's not meant to be collectible. It's meant to be drunk. I mean, everybody that we talk to, you know, this group especially, we all say whiskey is meant to be drunk. Forget what's behind me. You know, that's wallpaper. We've already established that. But whiskey is meant to be drunk, and it's meant to be drunk with friends and shared, and it's meant to be part of a memory. And the fact that we have a whiskey there that doesn't detract from you sharing it with your friends, that to me makes it a perfect whiskey, because it's giving you everything you want from a bottle of whiskey. It's a nice drink. It's something that you can appreciate, but it's something you want to share with friends, and you want to sit down and you want to talk, and you don't want to totally give all your attention to the whiskey. You want to be in that moment with everything going on at the same time. Any more questions, or shall we move on to the 11-year-old?
Just had one question about your barley. You said the majority of it comes from Norfolk.
Yeah.
Is that because that particular terroir suits your style best?
Oh,
naughty boy.
Actually asked that.
Well, shall we move on to the second dram?
I'm going to answer that one. So, Norfolk is widely known as one of the best producing areas for barley in the world. Forget Ireland and the south of Ireland and the north of Ireland. It's the east coast of England. We produce some of the finest barley that you can get hold of. Now, obviously, in that we have a very good climate. The terroir argument is if you believe in it, then you believe in it. If you don't, you don't, until we can get told that's different. That kind of does give itself to the fact of we're saying that the barley from Norfolk is some of the finest grown. There must be a reason for that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, in my mind, that that makes our whiskey the best, because I personally believe we obviously get some barley from, say, Scotland. That doesn't make our peated whiskey poor. I think, you know, our peated whiskey is excellent. It holds up to everything else. So therefore, does the terroir come into it? No, because we're getting barley from a different area, and we're still producing a whiskey that you can taste our distiller in. You can still taste all those flavors that we want you to taste from the original in the smoky. So to me, that means the terroir is less important than the way we actually make it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
So we'll move on to the 11-year-old, if that's okay with everybody else. So again, I'll just show the box for those. It's for those who haven't seen it in person. This is a very sort of yellow mustardy colour. If you all know the Coleman's mustard, the English Coleman's mustard, that box is very similar to that. And when you hold the glass up, you'll see it's a. I mean, I'm not one for talking about colour, but it's a beautiful golden colour, and it kind of represents to me a perfect colouring of a Norfolk barley. You've got that nice golden hue to it. And while you're all nosing this, I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the distillery and the age, going back to the question that was asked earlier in the 11-year-old. So we have whiskey that is coming up to 14-year-old. That is, we could this year, if we wanted to, put a 14-year-old whiskey out. We don't have a massive amount of stocks of it, but we do have stocks of it. And we kind of looked at what we could do, whether we did a 14 as a single cask, or a release, or a 13, or a 12, or 11, or a 10. Everybody kind of puts a 10-year out as their first release. We didn't want to be like everybody else, so we decided that we would put an 11-year-old out. As far as I'm aware, there is no significance for the 11. It was just a decision made. It was going to be 11 rather than 10, simply because we can. And that's a sort of little statement that I've picked up off Dave, so he'll probably be sending me an invoice soon, because the boutique whiskey company, they always say because we can. The English whiskey, we did it because, again, we can. We are the oldest whiskey distillery in England. We are putting out a statement there that, no, it's not 10, it's 11. We've gone another year on. We can do that. So we have done that. We could have put a 12 out. But 12, again, it's another year on, but it doesn't mean any more other than it's just 1 year older. 11 kind of stands out a little bit because it's different to the normality. And I think when you go into this, you'll see again that distillery character has just carried through again. You're still getting those vanillas, those fruits, those citrus notes, and it really does marry together very well. And again, you know, would just like to sort of raise a toast to James, whose birthday would have been today.
James.
Happy 75th birthday. Hope you're looking down and proud of what's happening with the English Whisky Distillery.
James.
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 Still get cream soup on that.
Yeah. I think what you find with this one is again, it's made up with the first and second refill bourbon casks. Again, all from Jim Beam. Reiterate the fact that this is our oldest age statement. Now, we have previously put out an 11-year-old, which I think was small batch or single cask. I'm not 100% sure. But it didn't carry the age statement. So it was a vintage rather than age statement. this is our oldest age statement to date.
Is this going to go into the core range? Sorry.
So at the moment, I think it's kind of a little bit undecided. What we did was we made up a batch of whiskey as an 11-year-old, and we made a fair amount of it. And we put it out there. I was talking to Mike, our global sales rep, ambassador, and it's basically all sold out. And we didn't expect that. You know, we'll be honest. We weren't expecting that. We were expecting, yes, we knew we'd sell a good amount. The distillery, I think, are down to their last 170 bottles, and that was from quite a good whack of bottles that we had. The UK is, as far as I'm aware, our sales point of view, we're all sold out for UK distribution. European, we're all sold out for distribution. Obviously, that has still to go into the shops and then to be sold as well. But from our point of view, it's basically gone. Now, the idea, I think, is we may make another batch. And whether we carry it on as a batch of a permanent, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know whether that decision has fully been made. But what has been discussed is that, yes, we've put an 11-year out this year, but next year we might put a 13-year-old out. And then the year after that, we might put a 15-year-old out, because we will have the stocks. Now, beyond that, we'll probably have to slow down at some point, because if we're putting an increment of 2 years on, we'll have caught up to ourselves pretty quickly within 2 years. So I kind of see this as being around, hopefully, into next year, and then we'll make a decision, I presume, next year as to whether to make it a permanent addition or whether it will be that limited small batch, but with a variance going forward that it will age slightly. I don't think there's any real emphasis on it going to a 12-year-old next year. I think within the distillery, and certainly talking to Mike, then I think the hope is that we go up in that 2-year increment. And hopefully, I mean, I would hope this stays around, because I think it's bloody good.
This is good. This is good. I've seen in the comments something I agree with massively, that it seems like the older version of what we just had, like a fuller, more rounded version of it.
Yeah, and I think that's
so
the beauty
strawberry
of what
cheesecake on the nose. It's not something I found too often in other whiskies. Apple, strawberry cheesecake, I've seen mint in the comments, so I agree with a bit of mint on the palate for me.
Yeah.
And a bit of cigar smoke on the palate or towards the finish. I don't know if I'm the only one getting anything like that, but that was one of the first things on.
We're getting a bit of like sherbet on the start, and then it turns into like a Pernod on the finish.
Yeah,
like a star anise kind of note on there. Really nice. Kind of real good journey going on.
And I mean, what pleases me the most is the fact that somebody has, I was already said that the fact of you kind of know that this is a grown-up version of the original, and that's the idea that we're trying to show that we haven't lost the distillery profile. We've kept it true to what we did as an earlier version. So the original is our core range to get you into what we're doing. We're showing the kind of distiller and the promise of what might come. With the 11-year-old, we're kind of then giving you what we've promised you. We're showing you that this is what we've produced already as a younger spirit. It's matured more. You've still got the same characteristics of that younger whiskey, and it's one of those whiskies that you can then sit down with and say, yeah, that's an English whiskey. That's what we expected it to taste like, but with a fuller body. And the fact of we have upped the ABV on this slightly, so this is now coming out at 46. Again, it's natural colour. It's non-chill filtered, like all our whiskies we try to do. It's natural. And Andy sort of brought up one earlier where we had 2 batches of the smoky that he's looked at that were quite different colours. And the unfortunate side to it is if you are not into whiskey massively and you look at something that's there, you see, I don't know if you can see Andy's. If you just say something, Andy, then hopefully you'll come up.
Terroir.
That, yeah. So as you can see there, you know, you've got two massively different colours. Can you just turn them around to show that they are the same label? So we're not perfect. Yeah. So, you know, there you have a whiskey that we purposely sent out to Andy and put something else in. So,
oh, that's what.
no, it's just coloured water. No, but that's the idea, that we don't want to be classed as everything looks the same. So when we get to this 11-year-old and we say to you it's natural colour, and you look at it and you see the goldenness and the beautiful colour in there, you're confident of the fact that it is natural. Everything we want to do is natural. Because if we don't, then it's kind of, what's the point? And, you know, we're not necessarily aiming at sort of a blended market where people want to see everything the same. We want you to know that we are producing something that we have the utmost respect for, and we are giving you something of quality. And that's our way of showing you that, you know, we are going to give you something at 46%. We're going to give you something that's naturally coloured, and we're going to give you something that's non-chill filtered.
I have all the minis of the smoky and the original, so I can do the test.
Say that again, sorry, Christoph.
I was saying I have all the minis of the English original and smoky, so I'll do the test and compare the color between the two. I don't know if it shows.
If you just turn it around so we can't just see the label.
That way should be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the original is kind of the same.
Yeah.
And let's see with the smoky. So,
knowing Andy, he'll have probably put the original back in the smoky bottle.
Okay, so the fuller smoky is the new one.
Yeah, so
yeah. And the almost empty is my old one.
Yeah.
And you can see there's a huge difference here on the smoky one.
Yeah. And as I was explaining to Andy earlier, the reason behind that is because we make these whiskies up in batches. So it's not, we don't make sort of 50, 60,000 litres up at a time. We just can't do that. So we'll make probably, you know, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 bottles up at a time, distribute that, and then we'll make another batch up. Because it's all done on site, then we have to be pretty mindful of how much we do mix. And talking to the guys at the distillery, so we bottle everything on site and it's all done by hand. Obviously the whiskey is put in the bottle by machine, but everything else is done by hand. And we can probably get through 1,000 bottles a day. Now, when you consider this to a bottling hall, then they may be up at a rough guess. I mean, I could be miles out, but I would say about 60 to 70,000 bottles a day, at least. So, you know, when we're only putting 1,000 out and we've only got a few people working in the distillery, we just cannot make the massive batches up. And that kind of gives you an idea of when you get a different batch, hopefully the flavors, the aromas will still be the same, but the coloring might be different. We don't make whiskey to look the same. We make whiskey to taste the same. And that is the whole point of it.
Strangely, there's not much difference between those two. And one is a sherry cask, full cask strength from my previous set of minis, and the second one, I'm not sure if it's on your right or on your left.
Yeah, so
on your old.
Yeah.
But strangely, colors are almost the same. Yeah, maybe a bit redder for the sherry anyway. But
so that the red one, is that the 10-year-old?
No, it was the sherry cask, single cask release at 56.5%.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the questions obviously earlier was about the age and is it the oldest? We have released a 10-year-old age statement, and that was, I believe, a single cask. But this is the oldest age statement that we've released as a batch. And you know, a large batch rather than just a single cask. But I mean, what's everybody thinking? Are you? The comments obviously earlier were that you could pick up the natural step from the original to the 11-year-old. Are we all agreeing on that?
Yeah. It's right on my street. This I always tend to like go for ex-bourbon rather than sherry. To be honest, that's my preference because, like you said before, it lets the distillery character shine through, and I do like the sort of like lighter, airy notes, and it's just a lot more intense, I think, than the original.
Yeah,
it's just got it's very much a dram of two halves. On the nose for me, I get a lot more fruits, like sort of like I've said before, apple pies and a bit of cinnamon, a bit of vanilla, and then on the palate, it's just so spicy and cereally and lovely and sweet, delicious, really nice.
Peppery on the finish.
Yeah, I mean, there. To me, like Andy says there, you do get that. I get a lot of the sort of, again, the apple peel and the citrus notes, sort of a lemony. I want to say a lemony bitterness, but I don't mean it as bitter as in bitter. It's that sort of peppery bitterness that you kind of get, and it's not necessarily all about the pepper. It's about the sort of citrus side of it as well.
Maybe grapefruit, Soren?
Yeah, grapefruit is probably a good one. I mean, again, I'm one of these people that I don't give a description out if I'm not really familiar, and I don't eat a lot of grapefruit, so I kind of don't go down the grapefruit
Strangely,
side.
I don't either, but I can recognize. This, but
I love grapefruit, and it's there.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of whiskey as well. Is the fact that we've got a group of people here. I mean, there's 33 of us in today, and we will all pick up something slightly different. None of us, hopefully, will pick up exactly the same. There'll be a core range of flavors that we'll pick up. And then beyond that, we will all get something different because whiskey is all about opinions. It's not about being told. It's not about the us telling you what you should be getting. We want you to tell us what you're getting and whether you're enjoying it. Because if you're not enjoying it, for argument's sake, we've got to look at what we're doing. We can't please everybody, and we know that. But if we can please a majority of people, then we know we're doing something right. And I think this 11-year-old, the way it's going to go is it's going to show where we will be in another 10 years' time. You know, just imagine this with another 10 years on it. That's the beauty for me. You know, that we've started with the original, and you kind of have in your mind, where's this going to go? What's it going to taste like in a few more years? We've now given you the answer of a sort of another 5 years on top of the original, and we hopefully in 5 years' time will give you another stepping stone of what it's like at 16, 17-year-old.
So I really like this, but I don't get the link back to the original. I was just getting lots of very light, fragrant lemons and lots of vanilla in the original, which I don't get here. Like maybe like the pepper thing, and maybe you could link that to like lemon peel or zest, but not.
Yeah. You see, yeah. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I the first thing I did when I knows this. I was sent this last week, and I don't try to look at official tasting notes because I don't see the point in it, because it only tells us what one person or two people may have gotten. Now I go into this and I pick up that what I call citrus notes, and the fact is, I mean, I know when we say citrus notes, it doesn't necessarily, you know, there isn't a lot to choose from. But it's how you perceive the citrus note to how I perceive the citrus note. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, because that's your opinion and you're drinking it, and that's perfect for you. You know, I do find a lot of similarities. The fact that you can still taste the fruitiness in there, you can still taste, to me, the citrus. You can still taste the pepperiness that's gone on in there, and that's the whole point. That you should not get exactly the same as what I get, or else what's the point?
No, I mean,
it's quite sort of reminiscent of a good like Sauvignon Blanc. You know, it's got some really kind of crisp, kind of fresh vegetable notes. You know, like sort of asparagus and like sort of sugar snap peas, and sort of like a bit of a grassiness to it, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I mean that's the beauty of having somebody that's probably drunk a bit of wine or drunk different spirits to what we drink or I drink, because you will then pick up those notes that I just don't see, because your palate has and your memories and your thoughts have been somewhere else that's beyond me.
Absolutely, yeah, very.
Soren, is there any tinted malt in this one? Because from time to time, I'm getting some smoke on the nose.
A very interesting question, Frank. How many people think there's any peated whiskey in this?
Smoke.
We get a little bit of smoke. Yeah, we
Yeah, very small, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Toasted casks, I was thinking.
Yeah, I was
charred or
thinking
toasted
more.
casks.
Yeah, I was
Maybe.
thinking
I don't think it's peat, it's char.
I'm getting a tiny bit, not iodine smoke though, just like wood smoke.
Now, the interesting thing is, yes, there is peated whiskey in here, but the makeup is done. I think there is possibly one, maybe two, but I think it's one cask of peated whiskey that has gone into this batch. And when I was told it was peated, and everybody knows that peated whiskey is not necessarily my first love, I went into this thinking, I'm going to pick that up and that's going to be it. And I could not detect it until the area that I found the peat in was when you nose it, there's nothing to me. There's no peat there whatsoever for me. When you drink it, that initial mouthfeel, again, there is no peat. It's when you swallow and that dryness comes, it's that smoky dryness comes back. And you suddenly think to yourself, there could actually be. And the power suggestion might be, let's see what Andy says, because he just had a drink and he went, no. I mean,
it's adding some depth to it, I guess. I don't really get much smokiness or really any sort of like definitive peat influence for me, I guess. It's got a bit of a herbaceous quality on the finish, I guess, which could well be driven by that.
Quite subtle, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I can't really put my finger on it being smoky, if that makes sense.
No, and I think that's the beauty of it, the fact of we haven't promoted it as being peated, we haven't promoted it as having peat in, and I purposely didn't mention that there could be a peated cask in there for the simple fact, I think it's so delicate, the fact, you know, it's kind of, if I say to you it's peated, you're all going to sit there and say, nah, you know, it's not. And that's, I was hoping that somebody may pick it up, and I kind of, I'm glad somebody did, because I think as soon as we start telling people that there is peat in this whiskey, it is going to split the room. People are going to say, I'm not getting it, and you know, or I am getting it, or I'm not getting it. And the whole point of not telling you up front was so it wasn't influenced, because I could drink that for quite some time and I would not have said it was peated.
Cigar smoke, and I thought I was mad for it. It was there and gone again so quickly that I wasn't sure if it was just in my head. But
and I think that's the whole beauty of it, the fact of it's kind of playing with your brain, that you taste something, and because we haven't mentioned it, you sort of think to yourself, oh yeah, there could be a little bit, but because nobody else in the room, or we haven't expressed the fact that there's any peat in there, you then start to doubt yourself. And then as soon as you tell them that there is peat in there, everybody then goes back to look for it, and you know, it's like, I'm still not finding it. And that's brilliant, because it's not meant to be obvious. It's meant to be subtle. And I mean, I'm told there's peat in there. Now, I'm still doubtful that there is. You know, that's where I'm at. You know, it could be one of those tricks that they've said to me, yeah, there's a bit of peat in there. We might be wrong.
Can I have some more, please, Simon?
Sorry?
Please, can I have some more, please?
Have you drunk it already?
All gone, buddy.
Do you know we sent you a case? How could you have...
And you said it was just one cask, you believe, of peated whiskey that went into this batch. How many casks overall have gone into that?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think the ratio is something like either 9 or 10 to 1.
What's the outturn, Simon?
I haven't been given a full number because it's not really...
Actually, it was on the... I'm sure it was on the press release.
I didn't get a press release.
One moment. Oh, I got the wrong phone.
I saw 400 or so available on the store yesterday.
The web store.
That's just you.
We have taken extra stock onto the shop because it's sold that quickly.
Okay, right.
That's pretty good.
That makes me think, is it about 2,500?
I think it's something like 2,500. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of tells me it's the 10, 11, sort of 9, 10, 11 casks. I was under the. I knew it was around 9 to 10 casks, but I wasn't sure of the full outturn of that one. So,
email says it was 2,466 bottles.
Thank you.
2,466. So yeah, probably 10 casks in total. So I would say 9 unpeated with 1 peated. And bear in mind, I mean, we have, I believe we have a 4 to 5% angel share. So it is slightly higher than Scotland. So them sort of figures are probably about right. 10 casks, 2,500 bottles from obviously ex-American bourbon casks.
Do you re-rack at all anytime?
I'm not 100% sure, Dave. I'm pretty sure we don't, but that is a question that I haven't actually asked. So I will find the answer for that one. As far as I'm aware, we fill the casks, and David will check them regular now. I probably don't want to say no, we don't, because I'm pretty sure if we have a problem, then we will re-rack. So I don't think there's anybody that would say they never re-rack, but whether we do it as a practice, I don't think we do.
Given you said there's about a 10-degree difference from the bottom to the top of the rack.
Yeah.
What's the difference on angel share between them?
Good question. I honestly don't know. Again, you know, the official figures are 4 to 5%. So obviously, in theory, the ones at the top are certainly going to lose more than the ones at the bottom. Now,
is that angel share recognised by HMRC that you lose more each year than say Scotland? Because you know there are casks in Scotland, although the average is 2%. You know that if you did the calculations on 2%, there wouldn't be old whiskey. Period. You know, there's a period where it will drop off completely, and you'll have nothing left in a cask. So. I just wondered if HMRC recognised that English whiskey is 4% over 2% in Scotland.
I mean, they are the figures that I've been quoted as official figures. So I'm assuming if they're telling us it's 4% to 5%, then I'm assuming that we would have to declare it as 4 to 5%. Because if we're putting out the fact of it's 4 to 5% and it was 2%, then in theory we are opening ourselves to being liable. Somebody would come back at us, and if I suppose if it was the other way around and we was telling people it was 2% and we was losing 4%, then we'd be a fool to ourselves, and it would eventually come back to where is this whiskey. Now, I suppose when you consider the fact of we look at say the likes of Paul John, where they're producing whiskey and going out to 8% and can't really go beyond possibly eight years, maybe 10 years before they're losing a massive amount. If we're losing 4 to 5% of our whiskey each year or over the maturation, then you know we're still looking at a considerable loss if we start to look at 20, 30-year-old whiskey. And who knows what it'll be like. The climate's changing all the time, and we're getting warmer summers and things like that. So, I mean, that could possibly even go up. And the fact of very typically, like a lot of typical warehouses that are going up now, we are not stone-clad buildings, we are tin-sheeted buildings. So the temperatures are only going to keep going up as well. They're not going to come down in them types of sheds.
Well, regarding the angel share, I don't agree with you, Dave, when you say that after a certain number of years, you wouldn't have any whiskey left in the cask. If we lose 2% each year from a 250 barrel, if it's really just 2% of what's left lost every year and not 2% of the original amount of liquid in the cask, then after 60 years, you should have, if Excel is right, around 74 liters left in the cask. And that's why we still can have a few liters of liquid in a very old cask. But afterwards, it also depends on the porosity of the cask. Some casks, as you said, will lose way more than 2% per year, while others may lose less. It depends on temperature, on the climate. Is it windy or not in the warehouse? Is it what's the average humidity, and so on and so on and so on.
And then you end up chewing pencils. So who wants to eat pencils? Not me. Get them out young. Get them out young. I like.
Stop causing trouble, else we'll lock you up and chuck away the key.
I do. The more wood, the better, please.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you've got to look at, when we talk about the Angel share and 2%, then we are averaging it out over all the casks. So some of those casks may be losing a lot less, and some could be losing a bit more. And, let's not forget all the leaks that suddenly appear on these casks and things like that. And, you're taking a little sample, and, there are a lot of extra little things to look at. 2% of what's left every year, then it's like you say, in theory, it should take a lot of years to lose the whole cask. But what's going to be left after 60 years is going to taste like, it's possibly going to taste quite oaky, isn't it?
Oh, so that makes me remember an article of whatever journal it was, saying that all whiskey over 30 years was rubbish because you were just drinking wood. I don't know if you remember this this article.
Yeah.
It was.
I remember that article. It was a stupid article. There was a few of it.
Yes, completely. Because here we all had experiences with very old whiskies that weren't that woody at all. Alistair, I'm quite sure you had way more experience with this than me, but at Whiskey Live last year, I had the chance to drink, what was it? How old was it? I think it was between 50 and 60 years old. I don't remember. But it was, sure, it was woody, but it was not liquid wood it wasn't liquid wood either. It really depends on the cask, on the wood, and the liquid, and everything.
Absolutely, every cask is different, isn't it? I mean, I have tasted the 75-year-old Mortlach. It was delicious.
Yeah, that's super. And I think that's one of the oldest things ever bottled.
It is the oldest ever single malt bottled, 75 years old Mortlach. It was delicious, and I still have
I
a
may be
somewhere.
A bit very, very jealous, Dave.
Now, I mean, I tried a 1948 Glen Grant, and if you'd have put that in front of me in a blind tasting, I would have said it was 12 years old.
Wow.
It was that lively, it was that vibrant, it was absolutely beautiful. But anyway, we have an 11-year-old in front of us.
Who cares about 11 years old?
Exactly. I mean,
Sorry,
again,
were you implying that there's some older whiskey in this as well? If you're able to jump up, so 11's the youngest, but there's some.
As with any age statement, 11 years is the youngest whiskey in here. Now, David, who is our master distiller, he also blends all our whiskies as well. So he will know the makeup of it. Andrew probably knows the makeup of it. The rest of us, as far as we are aware, it is all 11-year-old whiskey. There may be a slightly older one, but I would assume that we will have probably stuck to it all being 11-year-old and very closely matured together as well. Any more questions? I mean, is there any more thoughts on this one? Are we all thinking it's a success?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think you get the original. Well, I do. I get the original flavour of the original bottling when I initially taste it, and slowly it gets bolder and bolder and stronger.
Yeah.
And In the end, I'm getting pepper, licorice, sweet licorice.
Yeah.
Definitely some peat and cigar smoke, and a lovely finish to it as well. I mean, he's good. 11 years old. He's very good.
I mean, the strange thing is, I've literally just taken another sip, and on that sip, I will swear it's peated because it suddenly feels very smoky. And I don't know if that's perception of us talking about it, because that is the first time I've tried that and felt that there is definite peat in there, or definite smoke.
And I'm getting licorice with that as well.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. I like that.
I mean, again, sort of going back to the distillery, one of the nice things about it is we are obviously a family-owned business. So this is run from Andrew and his wife, and sort of we don't have major backers like some distilleries. It's all in-house, and that's why, again, the fact of we are the oldest and we are promoting English whiskey is such a proud thing for the company, because it is a small style business. I don't think we'd ever want to be called a craft distillery, but we are certainly not a big player in the sense of it, but we are a big player in the sense of English whiskey, but just not in the production side of it. Are we all ready to move on, or do we want a little bit longer with the 11-year-old?
I'm enjoying that.
So if we're all ready, then we'll move on to the 11-year-old. 11-year-old, the smoky. So
I enjoyed it, so yeah, I'll have a bottle, please.
Well,
yeah, I'm really glad it was actually.
The website, as of I think 10 o'clock this morning, had 170 bottles left, and that's with adding some more to the outturn that we were selling.
Just said 161, Soren. I've just been.
I'm waiting for the 10% card for when you register for the newsletter.
We're adding 10% on for you, Christoph.
Did has Master of Malt taken many?
I'm not sure because I don't deal with the sales side of things, but I keep looking at Master of Malt, waiting for it to come on there. Again, all I know is our distribution for the UK has all gone. So who's got it? I don't know.
Arriving at my house tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a question you'll have to ask Mike, because obviously he's the sales global side of that. But I'm certainly expecting it to come up in Master of Malt.
What other markets do you sell to if it's all the British ones gone? Where else are they?
So I know we'll be going into Germany. I know we'll be going into France. I know we will be going into the States. Pretty sure it's going into the States. As other than that, again, I am not involved with the sales side at all. So it will be it is going to all our major distributors around Europe. So if you know of shops where we sell, then it should be hitting them. But like I say, we don't have a lot to sell. So I'm talking to Mike. It was sold out extremely quickly. We have been surprised at how quick it went. But again, I suppose you look at that and you feel that, people have been waiting for this age statement to come out. Everybody expected it kind of last year or 2 years ago, in theory, to have been a 10-year-old. We held off. We did put the 10-year-old single cask out, but that's basically the only age statement we've really ever put out. It's kind of been vintages and then straight to this 11-year-old. We foresaw this as being released, and from the number of bottles we put out, we expected it to last probably several months. We weren't expecting it to almost sell out within what we are now Sunday, so 4 days basically. And this is all from, and the fact that the distillery isn't even open, so we haven't had the distillery has just reopened. So the visitor centre is reopened, the cafe isn't. So the fact that we haven't really had the footfall, and the fact that we didn't really push anything until the last few days, shows you the fact that people have been waiting for this whiskey for quite some time. Now it's released. I think the fact of the because it has sold out so quickly, I am hoping David and Andrew will get together and say, look, this has been quite a success. We need to keep this going, and hopefully bring out a little bit more. And then maybe next year reevaluate whether we still bring out an 11-year-old as a core range, or whether we bring out a 13-year-old to show where, you know, this is where we've jumped to now.
With the age, Soren, obviously, yeah, it's pretty uncommon to have an odd numbered age statement right after 10. Did you guys just feel the time was right to bottle this?
Yeah, I mean, the intention has been for some time to put an age statement out there. But like I sort of said earlier, we didn't want to be kind of like everybody else and just jump straight into the 10-year-old. We wanted to be a little bit different. We wanted to almost, when you stand and look at a shelf full of age statement whiskey and you see 10, 10, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12,
yeah,
you know, an 11-year-old suddenly stands out a little bit. You then add the sort of the colouring of the package and things like that, and it suddenly becomes something different. Now, 11-year-old, there is no significance as far as I'm aware behind the 11. It just happens to be we didn't want 10. We kind of didn't want to put the 12, the generic 12 out again. We wanted to be slightly different, so we put the 11 out. And hopefully, like I say, I don't think from what's been sort of talked about, from what, you know, where we'd like to go, not necessarily decisions that have been made, but sort of just chatting between myself and Mike and David and that we want to be a little bit different. We don't want to be towing behind everybody else. You know, we're the forerunners of English whiskey. We want to shout about that. We don't want to put a 10-year-old out. We want to put an 11-year-old out. We want to be different. I can kind of guarantee you that when the other English distilleries become that, so Cotswolds, Bimber, Lakes, probably Penderyn as well, you know, they'll put a 10-year-old out. So why should we be the same as what they might do? We want it to be totally different. We want to stand out from the crowd. We're proud to be English. We're proud to put out an age statement. We wanted 11. We didn't want 10.
11 is a prime number as well, and for that reason, it's got all sorts of beautiful symmetry to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, you kind of look at it, and if you're a believer in the fact that an age statement matters, because not everybody believes that age statement matters, then a 10 is a typical number. We all expect a 10. You look at 11, it's symmetrical. It's, you know, for somebody who has a little bit of OCD, you've got 2 sticks instead of a stick in a circle and all these sort of things. To me, it just stands out that little bit more on a shelf where you see 10, 12, you see an 11, you think, oh, that's different. And that's what we wanted to be. You know, we're not, I mean, one question that's come up a little bit, you know, are we governed by any governing bodies? So no, we're not. We kind of go under European law. We try to go under the SWA, but we don't have to. The same with this. We didn't have to put out a 10. We didn't have to put out a 12. So we put out an 11 as something a little bit different.
And there's a track record to show that prime numbers work as well. You know what I mean? It draws your attention. You only have to look at like Craigellachie.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're 13, 17, 21 when they released that range. It drew quite a bit of attention and aplomb in a way for doing that.
Yeah. I think at any time you see a prime number, Andy, it draws your attention.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to if you look in the food industry and red is synonymous with making you feel hungry. To me, when you see a prime number and something a little bit different, your attention is brought to it instantly. You know, if like I say, if you've got a lineup of 50 whiskies and they all say 10, and then you've suddenly got one that says 11, you're going to be drawn to that one.
I think it would show up quite quickly as well, to be honest. I'd probably pick it out really quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's Spinal Tap, though, wasn't it? 11.
Say that again, sorry.
It's a bit Spinal Tap, 11.
Yeah, it turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Everyone else goes to 10.
Miles away then. Yeah. I mean, we've ramped it up. Our first age release, we didn't put out a 10. No, we put out an 11 because we can. We've got stocks to put out an 11-year-old. We didn't. As soon as we got to 10-year-old, we didn't jump on the 10-year-old bandwagon. We waited. We waited till we felt it was right, and we put out an 11. Like I say, we could have done a 12. We could have probably done a 13. Give it another 6 months. We could have done a 14. We didn't. We chose 11 for the fact of hopefully 11, and then like we've said already with Craigellachie and things like that, we might do the 13, and then in a year or two's time, a 15. And that's hopefully the way that we will see our stocks going. That it won't be the typical thing. We'll be a little bit different. And that's kind of why we've stuck to our principles with the bourbon casks. We want to show what we can do. And we want to show it and show that we're proud of what we're doing. Any more questions on the 11, or are we ready to move to the smoky?
Ready for one that kind of cuts across the two. You've gone 46 on the 11, but the other two are 43.
Yeah.
What's the thoughts on that? Would you maybe think about bringing the other two up to 46, or is it just
quite simply no? So the 43 is two. We didn't want to come in at 40. We wanted to give you that little bit more because I think if you talk to most people now, 40 is acceptable. It's the minimum that you have to do. But why give you the minimum? Why not give you that little bit extra? 43%, them two will probably always stay at 43. This one has kind of been ramped that little bit more because it's sort of sitting in that small batch that we do. All our small batches are 46%. Again, natural colour, non-chill filtered. So we've kind of put this along that. And the fact of, again, it's our age statement. It's our oldest whiskey. We didn't want to just come back in and say, yeah, here it is at 43%. We wanted typically to give you that little bit extra. Our whiskey tastes damn good at 46%. We've done it, and that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to give you kind of what people are asking for. People are asking for whiskies at a minimum of 46%.
It makes a big difference, Simon. It really does.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, even at the 43%, it's still just a little bit more than what some distilleries give you. Now, I'm not knocking the 40%. I get the 40%. There is a reason it's put out at 40%. And there's nothing wrong with it. Some whiskies need that little bit more, some whiskies don't. But, we don't have a lot of stock, so the sensible thing kind of would have been to give it at 40%. But we just, as a company, obviously, the decision was made. The original and the smoky will come out at 43. It's an entry-level whiskey. It's designed to bring people into whiskey. It's not designed to be this mind-blowing whiskey that's going to cost you thousands and thousands of pounds. It's there to be drunk. It's there to be enjoyed. And it's there to be drunk however you want to drink it. This is just a nice little step up into that age category that we're kind of saying, look, it is a little bit more special. We have done a little bit more for you. We've brought it out naturally. We've brought it out non-chill filtered. We've given you the age statement. We've given you an 11-year-old, and we've given you the 46% to bring it in line with our small batch releases.
So, have the chapters all gone now? Then that's it. Period. No more chapters.
As far as I'm aware, the chapters are now gone. So all the chapters in theory are now small batch. So where we would release the peated, then the smoky, then something else, then something else. The idea is that we are now giving you a core range with the smoky and the original. We are now giving you an age statement, and we will continue to release the small batches. The other exciting thing, while we're on to kind of that sort of thing, we now do a distillery exclusive. So we have a single cask in store in the distillery shop where you can go, you can bottle your own. I'm pretty sure it's a small cask, so again, it's going to turn over quite quickly. It is bottled at cask strength, obviously, and that's something that has literally just happened, I think, on Thursday morning. It was.
That sounds like the next Whisky Circus.
There always used to be a distiller's edition as well, didn't there? when you visited?
Yeah, I mean, the distiller's edition is kind of still there, but I think that will be replaced with the bottle your own. Now, again, it was only something that was kind of put my way a couple of weeks ago. It was quickly discussed, and then I just got confirmation on, I think, Thursday dinner time that, yes, it's actually happened. So I think as most brand ambassadors and people will tell you, that sometimes we're the last people to actually get the information. So there is a bottle your own. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's. Well, I'm not going to say how much it is because I'm not 100% sure. But
is that
I'm
open now? Then the bottle your own.
Pardon?
Is the bottle your own on now? Because the shop's
It's on
open.
now, yeah. The only thing I believe, it is bottled in 50 cl bottles. But I could be slightly wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was what was mentioned to me. The other thing, I don't know, I don't think I mentioned it, for the 11-year-old, we have put that out at $59.95. So again, you know, I think it's very reasonably priced. It probably sits in the middle of where 10, 11, 12-year-old whiskies should be. But again, we are talking of a distillery that does not have a massive output, so we have to price it sensibly. And I think it's good value for money. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, obviously I am working for them. If somebody said to me this was £60 in the current climate, I would still easily consider buying this.
There's 10% off if you buy 6 as well.
Yeah, there is 10% off if you buy a case. Obviously, that's where
I've got one arriving. I've got one arriving tomorrow. What bottle? Not case.
One case.
Simon, I thought you'd have bought a case. No, he's waiting for the wedding present to be a case.
Oh, you're on about me. Sorry.
And
Well,
so how many cases did you buy? Did you went up to 50% off?
I've got 3 boxes there. But,
bottle your own, can you order that? Will they ship?
I would say the best thing to do is ring them, because in the current climate, then everything is slightly different at the moment. Yeah. So the best thing I would say is ring them up and ask them, because I think in the long term, the answer to that question will be no. It will be a distillery exclusive that you pick up from the distillery. In the current climate, I would kind of think it could be slightly different, but you know, don't ring them up and say Soren said we could get 1 cent.
Okay. Yeah.
And bearing in
Is
mind,
there a space on the bottle for a message?
Pardon?
Is there a space on the bottle for a message? Possibly 3 words, one of which being circus.
I'm not sure about that, but that is obviously something, again, that I'm pushing for, that if we get enough people involved, that there is every chance of us getting a single cask to ourselves. And that is being mooted, and there is even a possibility, are you ready, for our own label. But that is still to be discussed with the bosses and things like that. But yeah, things are in progress. I've spoke to Mike, who he will be the one that gets it all rolling in the long term, and hopefully we can then come up with our own cask. And bearing in mind that, you know, the company do sell these 30-litre casks to anybody that wants to buy one. If you want your own and mature it in the warehouse, the group here, what we will do is we will get something slightly different. So everything has been spoken about behind the scenes. Hopefully the boss will be watching this.
How much are those 30-litre casks, Simon?
Pardon?
How much are those 30-litre casks?
The 30-litre casks, oh, now you're asking. I've got to remember now. I think they are $14.50 or $16.50, and that's before VAT. They can be ready to bottle, so I think you can buy stock that is bean already in there, or you can buy new make that will be matured for you. So I think the whole price probably comes out at, I think it's about 1,800 by the time you've paid taxes and have had it bottled and shipped to you.
That's fine.
Are we ready to go on to the smoky now? Yep.
Yep.
So again, with this one, it's very similar, or it is the same makeup as the original. So we do it at 43%. We do it non-chill filtered, and we do it all naturally coloured, as we've already shown with the sort of variations in batches. All made up from first fill and second fill bourbon casks. All from the Jim Beam distillery again. And the difference with this one is we use crisp maltings from, I think they're just outside Aberdeenshire up north. And we have to do that because they don't have the facilities to peat the whiskey where we get them from in the UK. So this is peat that is taken from the mainland Aberdeenshire area. So again, it is totally different to an Islay whiskey, an Orkney whiskey, because these are the areas where you don't have the trees growing, that sort of mosses and grasses, whereas this is decaying wood, so it gives you a totally different level. What we do with this one is, when we get in touch with crisps, we stipulate a minimum of 50 ppm. And 50 ppm, as most of you will know, it's still a high ppm for whiskies these days. This is obviously done and tested at the drying stage, the barley stage. This is not 50 ppm in the bottle. The guess would probably be that it will come into bottle at around that 25 to 30 ppm by the time you've distilled and at this sort of type of age. And hopefully what you'll find again in this one, when you dive into this one, you get that gentle smoke. It's not overpowering. It's just enough. To me, I always describe this one as very fruity, again with that vanilla, but wrapped in a smoky overcoat. So it's allowing all those flavors to still shine, but it's not going to dominate everything you smell. Once you go into there, you are not just going to get, oh, it's peated, it's smoky, it's wham. You know, I can't.
Yeah, that distillery character is still there.
It is, yeah. And that's the beauty for me, that you still pick out all those delicate fruits. You know, you still get that citrus nose, you still get that sort of apple peel, you still get those vanillas, but it's all wrapped up in, to me, like I say, a smoking jacket. It's got that smokiness to it, but it's not too much to make it a very peated whiskey. It's not an Octomore, it's not an Ardbeg, it's not Lafroig, and it's not meant to be. That's the whole point. I've seen reviews where people have said, oh, it's nowhere near a Lafroig, or it's nowhere near. It's not meant to be. It's a totally different makeup. It's meant to be soft, it's meant to be subtle, and it's meant to just extenuate those nice characters that we get from our distiller.
Yeah, I totally get those sort of fruit notes you're talking about, but on top of that, it's really sort of like herbal for me. It's like sort of like dried oregano, and the smoke is more of a bit like you alluded to in the different sort of peat types. The smoke reminds me of going into a pub in winter that's got like an open fire in it. Yeah. Proper like nice wood smoke. It's a bit clammy in there. There's a little bit of oil in there as well. To that extent, you know, a bit like the shig, a bit like that.
No, I think this is, to me, you do get that little bit more oiliness than you get on the original. And whether that's down to the sort of smokiness or the barley side of it, I'm not 100% sure, but it does taste that little bit more oily. But people sort of say, you know, well, what would you compare it to? I think, to me, the nearest style of whiskey that you could compare it to smoky-wise would probably be Highland Park, because it's not peaty, it's smoky, and that's the way I look at it.
I also find it's quite sort of sweet spice on the nose as well, so sort of cinnamon, nutmeg, which definitely don't get on the original or the 11, but I didn't.
Like dark fruits as well, like a real kind of sweety, fruity kind of note on there.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of always intrigues me when people kind of say dark fruits in bourbon casks, because a lot of people think you shouldn't pick up dried fruits in bourbon casks, but you will always pick up some sort of dried fruit or chocolatey notes in a bourbon cask. You know, it's a myth that you cannot get those dried fruits from a bourbon cask. So yeah, you know, I totally agree with you in that one.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I do get a bit of peat, I must admit. I still get the icing sugar sweetness. I'm still getting pineapple, tropical notes, definitely. Herbaceous, definitely. But I get quite a bit of peat. Seems to be more than some of the others are getting, definitely.
I think it's one of those, when you talk about peated whiskies, it all depends on your palate. Some people will pick up a lot more peat than others will. I mean, I was always one that when I dived into a peated whiskey, that's all I could ever taste, was the smoke and the peat and the earthiness. Now when I go into them, I'm kind of like, oh, it's not as peated as I expected. But with this, I kind of get that Manuka honey flavour, you know, that earthiness in it. And it's not,
oh yeah, definitely.
That's kind of where I come with the peatiness, but it's the smoke in here that I think enhances the flavour profile of it.
Very nice.
I get kind of like a Fishman's Friend style menthol.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really nice freshness on the finish. Reminds me of eucalyptus.
I mean,
yeah.
This is one, I think in the recent, where we highlighted the rum cask, this was the one that kind of almost stole the show, because people were finding this one a little bit more full-bodied. And one thing that I've always said with the English Whisky Company, even when it was in the younger days, the peated whiskey always felt more mature. It always felt that little bit more full-bodied, that little bit oily, that little bit bolder in a sense. And it to me, you can kind of almost mask a little bit when you do peated whiskey. It takes away them very little subtle notes, the youthful flavours, and it kind of masks it, whereas the original gives you that very typical distillery profile. This one just adds a little bit to it.
I think it's beautifully balanced, because I'm really at the beginning of my peat journey. So this is more smoky. I can do smoky. This is more smoky than smoky, but the balance is beautiful. There's like a real creaminess as well as that. It's really lovely.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of it, because again, what the amount of shows that I've done, and one thing that people always come up and they'll say is, I don't like peated whiskey. And to me, this is kind of a perfect introduction to peated whiskey, because it's not, if you don't like peated whiskey, you're not going to like peated whiskey. But for those that are basing that around the Lafroigs, the Ardbegs, the big heavy hitters, then this one is a lot more approachable. It really does allow you to still get all the other characters that are in that whiskey, as well as giving you that smokiness as well. And one thing I would say with this one, I think this one would make a perfect cocktail, because it's got those flavours, and the smoke again is subtle. So if you want to put this into a cocktail, it's there again. It's not, we're not going to tell you that you shouldn't be drinking it with mixers, or you shouldn't be drinking it with ice, or you shouldn't drink it with water. You drink it how you want. It's your whiskey. We don't want to tell you how to drink your whiskey. We want you to enjoy your whiskey. So that means you drink it how you want. And I just think with this, I mean, I'm not one for making cocktails. I'd probably be the one with the shaker and the top comes off and it goes everywhere. But to me, some proper lemonade in this would be perfect as a tall drink with just that smoky edge. I mean, there are others in here that are far more eloquent with the cocktails, and they would probably come up with a far better mix than I would. Yeah, I mean, Marcus, and I know Dave started to get into his cocktails, and you know, there are ways of drinking it. Eh?
Cough, cough.
Cough, cough.
Yeah, I need some Marmite in it, I think.
I think there's one right way to drink whiskey, and that's the way you want to drink it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's something we're all seeing more of now. You know, that the old stipulations of you drink it neat, or you drink it with ice, or you drink it with water. That's all going. It's the emphasis has got to be on you drink it your way. If you go into a tasting or a masterclass or a shop, and anybody tells you that you should not add water, or you should not add ice, or you shouldn't add Coke, or you shouldn't add whatever, then personally, I think you should walk out of that store and go to another one that will tell you, you drink it how you bloody well want.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I like to if I try something for the first time, I like to have it neat, how it's being presented to me, to see, you know, what the people who created it and bottled it and chosen it to come out of that ABV or whatever it is. I try it neat there, especially if it's less than cask strength, because they've sometimes it's you know, economics, sometimes it's by design, but but then I add water afterwards. And
I mean, a couple of spots in this one for me, Soren.
Sorry,
I'm saying a couple of spots of water in this one for me really bring that the distillery character back to the fore.
Yeah.
It kind of steps that the peat back a wee bit. I'm a bit like Nick. I'm very kind of early start of my peat journey. So yeah, literally just a couple of drops really brings that back to the fore for me.
But that's the beauty of it. And I mean, to me, any good ambassador or whatever will kind of always tell you to try it without water. Because if you don't try it without water, how do you know you don't like it that way? And then to drink it your way. That's what I will always say. Look, try it this way, and then drink it your way, and just see if you know, if you've got a particular way to drink whiskey, you are probably always going to drink whiskey that way. Over time, you may change the way you drink whiskey. I have. Now, I'm a stickler because I drink whiskey how it comes out of the bottle. I don't add water for the simple reason, I like somebody said, I want to taste it how it's been bottled. And yes, I may miss out on some subtle flavours, or I may miss out on that. But after a while, your palate gets accustomed to drinking whiskey that way. Now, it doesn't mean to say that that's the right way, because I have friends that will drink it with water every single time. And they, you know, I will say to them, try it without water. They'll try it without water, and within one sip, the water's gone in. Now, that's how they enjoy their water. Who am I to tell them that they're wrong? Exactly. Who says I'm right for drinking it without water? But that's just the way I personally prefer it.
I quite like adding water.
Or maybe they don't like water by itself and just add a bit of whiskey in it.
Yeah. I mean,
does improve it, Christoph, you're right.
I would say this makes a fantastic old-fashioned. I've had a couple of bottles of this, and in an old-fashioned, and you can even go wild and burn a little bit of mint into it as well, or add some like blackberry jam that you've brought down, and it really it's just fantastic. The sweetness, the smokiness, everything about it really changes, and it's a great versatile. It's just a great whiskey.
And that's a good thing to hear, because again, we're not a distillery that has purposely gone out to create a whiskey purely for cocktails. You know, we've produced a whiskey that we think is good as an all-round whiskey, same as the original. That, you know, we will give it to you in the way we have bottled it, for you to do what you want with it. And that's kind of the beauty of when you get a whiskey at say 46%, you can do what you want with it. If it comes out at 40%, you haven't got a lot of leeway to go with that whiskey before you are bringing it down and down. Now, some companies will say, you know, 40%, that's how they drink it. You know, the master blenders, I mean, some of them drink it down to 20%, and that's what they're choosing the whiskey on. And there's obviously a reason for that. You know, they're finding all those subtleties. So in theory, should we say that whiskey should be drunk at 20% because that's how it's been developed? But again, you know, it's how you want to drink it.
If you speak to them, they don't drink it at 20% because it just tastes watery. It's only about protecting their their noses from alcohol burn. Really,
Yeah.
you do pick out a dud cask. The cask will come. You remove the alcohol and you'll smell the cask, and that's what they're looking for as well. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when they're doing it at that sort of, they are looking for more than we're looking for in the sense. It's the idea is, like Dave just said, that you are picking out a dud cask, or you are picking out the flaws in the whiskies. We're not necessarily looking for that, unless obviously some people make a living out of criticising whiskies. But the idea is that the whiskey is there to be enjoyed. Everybody, there will always be somebody that doesn't like our whiskey. We understand that. There will always be somebody that doesn't like this particular whiskey or doesn't like that particular whiskey. We understand that. The idea is for you to come to us and to find a whiskey, if we can, that you enjoy. And if you enjoy it, then hopefully you'll come back. If we make bad whiskey through the whole range, you are never going to come back to us. And what good is that to us?
It's the whole point of having a range, effectively.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I know we've looked at, and sort of, there's been an odd discussion of that maybe we've got too much out. But to me, you've got to have a slight diverse amount of whiskies, because then you are catering for everybody. Now, the problem then comes as to, if you are trying to cater for everybody, you are taking away your strengths. But, to me, there should always be a whiskey somewhere in that range that somebody can enjoy. And, that's why we've got a peated and unpeated. That's why we've got sherry finishes, or we've got wine finishes, or we've got full maturations, or we've got all bourbon, or we've got all, we also do the liqueurs. We have several liqueurs that we produce, and they are, they're fantastic. But again, that's the idea, to do that that stepping stone into whiskey as well.
I think you guys have done it in the right way, Simon, that it's got, yes, you're kind of pulling on the different flavour profiles. So you've got that original, approachable, the smoky there, but the distillery character's still there in all of them. They're very clearly all of the same family, and you're opening it out to different tastes. I think it's definitely spot on. They're all great whiskies.
That's it. And I think one thing that, as like I kind of touched on earlier, that we are now progressing. We are now getting older. We are now learning. Our distiller, David, he wasn't there from the start. So he came in and he learned his trade. He came from Green's Brewery. So, he was taught by Ian Henderson, who came from Lefroy. So the distiller there, he was taught how to make whiskey, and he made whiskey his way. And it's his responsibility to produce the whiskies that we're drinking. And I kind of like that idea, because we're still small, that the guy who's making the whiskey also blends it and gives it to us. He's the one that understands that liquid that's in those casks. He's the one that's working with it every day. I and Mike, who's the global ambassador, we've got the easy jobs in a sense. We go out and tell you how good it is. He makes it. He's the one who does all the hard work, not us guys. And, it's kind of a shame sometimes, the fact that he's not out there sort of like today and listening to all the good comments, because we have to give it back to him, and we'll tell him that, it was okay. We're not going to make him big-headed. But, they're the guys, and you go to these big companies, and the people making it have no say in how it's then distributed, how it's put into bottle, and that's the sad thing in a sense. So, sort of out of the three then, does anybody have favourites?
I think the 11-year-old for me, closely followed by the Smoky.
Yeah,
definitely.
Same as Andy.
Yeah, completely agree. 11.
Yeah, 11-year-old, closely followed by the Smoky.
I like the 11.
Your bottle's the wrong way around, Dave.
Yeah, the Smoky really excited me. I like that.
The 11, yeah. And again, that's the perfect outcome, because if everybody had told us the same whiskey, then we might as well only produce the one whiskey. And the fact that we've got a little bit of a cross-border thing, you know, yes, it's fantastic that a lot of us have chosen the 11-year-old, because again, I think personally I would pick the 11-year-old out because it really suits my palate a lot more than the smoky. I appreciate the smoky a lot more than I would have done a year back, and in a year or two's time, that might be the one that I would sort of pick out. Now, if any of you have tried our Smoky Virgin, then that is absolutely stunning. That is one that, to me, had we put that in here rather than the smoky, that would have fully come out on top, because that is an absolutely fantastic dram.
I think the smoky is a really nice everyday dram to me.
Yeah, and I think
I was going to say the smoky's got to be good if Nicky likes it, is what I was thinking,
Well, that's it. And the fact of, you know, people that are kind of either just starting out on the peated side of whiskies, or even those that are well into the peated whiskies are still picking that one out, says a lot for what we have produced.
I think the style of it as well is quite good for a peated whiskey, because it's one of those that you can sort of drink it. I wanted to say any time of day, but don't judge me. But, you know, I've got to be in a certain mood to drink a peated whiskey. I've got to be in a certain, you know, I do drink a lot of it, but I generally have it sort of at the end of my nightly drinking stages, if you know what I mean. Whereas that, I could happily drink that in the afternoon. I'll probably finish these, to be fair.
That's fine,
you know.
That's fine. I mean, and, you know, again, I think that comes down to the fact of that they're not big, heavy, dominant casks. You know, we have purposely brought out the bourbon casks, so they can almost be drunk at any point of the day. I mean, I know when me and Dave have worked on the boutique stands, that, you know, we kind of break the table down a little bit to breakfast drams, dinner time drams, and evening drams. And this range kind of, it almost gives itself so you don't have to break it down. You know, the smoky can be drunk during the day. The original could be drunk at night. And I think these whiskies are what I kind of call perfect mood whiskies, that depending what mood you're in, depends when and how you drink it. And, you know, we haven't brought out a massive amount of different flavors. We've brought out a profile that people can say to us, you know, what's your profile? Mostly bourbon casks. It's mostly the bourbon matured whiskies. That's where we're going. You know, you look at some distilleries and it's like, well, you know, last week they brought out a sherry cask, next week it's a wine cask, next week it's a port cask, then it's back to a sherry, and they're all over the place. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because you are showing a diversity, and that's, again, it's still a good thing, but you kind of don't know what they're actually aiming for and what the distillery profile is. And you don't know how good their spirit could be if it was allowed to shine on its own rather than those big dominant casks. But again, every distillery works differently, and that's the beauty of the whiskey industry, that as a whole, it gives you something for everybody. And on different moods, different days, you're always going to go to something else. And I mean, I've seen sort of you, Andy, reviewing whiskies, and I've seen a few other people talking about whiskies, and 1 minute you've got a favourite, and then you taste something else, and that suddenly blows you away, and that's your favourite. And then, you know, I mean, people say to me, obviously, what's your favourite distillery? Now, I always kind of go to Auchentoshan, but it's kind of almost one of the last ones I now reach for as a bottle to drink. So, you know, we all change and we all evolve. And it's the same as whiskey. It's changing, it's evolving. And what we like today, we could have done this tomorrow and everybody might have picked the original. But
Darren, how much does the smoky go for? Is it?
So the smoky in the English Whisky shop is selling for $39.95, the same as the original.
Cool. I like it when she likes the cheaper ones.
Let me just check that, make sure I haven't given you a massive discount. Yeah, $39.99. Sorry, but yeah, you know, again, it's sub £40. It's under that magical £50 that everybody sort of talks about. And again, it's a whiskey that you can buy for that price, and you will drink it. You know, you're not going to buy a bottle that's 80, 90, 100 or 200, 300, 400 pounds and kind of almost be afraid to open it. You know, you're not going to give this a second thought about opening it. And that's the idea with our whiskey, that we want you to buy it, we want you to open it, and we want you to drink it, and we want you to drink it fast. And then come back and buy another bottle.
Well, I've just gone back from the peated. I've just poured myself a little drop of the original. Thought, well, we'll go back to the original, see how that after we've gone through, and there's loads of honey, toffee, fudge, vanilla. They get sort of less sweeter as they go along. So when you go back, that is really sweet. It's really lovely. I mean, it's a lovely sipper, to be honest.
Well, what I'll do now is I'll bring the tasting to an end. So I'm going to say thank you to everybody for coming in and discussing things. We will stay around for a little bit longer if anybody wants to talk about anything else, but really appreciate you all for coming. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about the English whiskey and what we do, and shown you that, you know, it is good whiskey, and hopefully you'll come back and buy some more and come and visit us at some point. So
thank you so much.
Still stay in Scotland
for the opportunity, Soren.
Cheers, Soren.
Cheers.
Thank you. That's brilliant.
You guys, I must admit, 'cause